Hey guys, this is video number 4 in the Guitar Keys series where we're looking at how to play all of the different interval patterns that are possible in a given key. And in this video, we're going to focus on the key of D. Though first, before we jump in, I should ask, why are we even doing this? You could pick up any tab book, go to a tab website, or pick up a chord chart book and learn how to play the different finger positions. And as long as you press the right positions on the fretboard, you're going to make some music. So why would we dive so deep into learning the interval patterns specifically? Because you're more clever than most musicians. That's the short answer. The long answer, the longer answer, is that these interval patterns are what inform all of the other scales and melodies and chords and progressions that you play in music. And if you want to do more than just parrot other musicians, if you want to actually create your own art, write your own songs, then understanding these intervals is key to mastering the art of songwriting. So with that said, let's look at the intervals that make up the key of D. So looking at the key of D, when we say the key of D, what we mean by that is that we're focusing on the D note within the chromatic scale. There are 12 notes in the chromatic scale. And if we really focus on D as the tonal center of gravity, that's in essence what it means to be in the key of D, which on the guitar fretboard you can see is plotted in different positions on the frets and strings. We can play D on the open 4th string, or on the 2nd string 3rd fret, 5th string 5th fret, 3rd string 7th fret, 1st string 10th fret, 6th string 10th fret, or the 4th string 12th fret. All these different positions, all of these different octaves are just versions of D. Though of course we don't just play the D note in a song. That would get boring pretty fast. So to reinforce this note as a tonal center of gravity, we play different notes in between to move from one D note to the next along the fretboard, spaced at intervals that form a kind of natural path, like a series of stepping stones that walk our fingers up or down, left or right. And the most natural pattern that really creates the sense of keyness, for lack of a better term, is the major scale. In the key of D, these are notes D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. And when we plot these on the guitar, we can start to play the D major scale in different positions. Like this one starting on string 5, fret 5. The scale moves from a low D to a high D. Or we can go in the reverse direction starting on the high D, moving to the low D like this. Or we can shift up a couple of frets and start on the 3rd string, 7th fret, to play the same pattern in a higher octave, like this. Or down. In both of these examples, the scale naturally gravitates towards the D note. On either end of the scale, the D notes serve as bookends. D is the ultimate destination of these patterns in the key of D. Now this pattern, the D major scale, is just a subset of the chromatic scale. There are 12 notes in the chromatic scale, but when we focus on just D major, all of these other notes are skipped. They fade into the background, so we can focus on this very pleasing pattern. In fact, this pattern is so pleasing, it's so popular, that we can also label it using a set of scale degrees or interval labels using numbers, where D is interval 1, numero uno, the star of the show, and all of the other intervals in this pattern are numbered according to their position in the scale. So we can play the same sequence using numbers like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now that 8th pitch is really just the D note, or 1, at a higher octave. So we could say that the scale resolves to 1 again, like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. It just repeats. Likewise, in the higher octave, the same pattern is repeated. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. This set of intervals makes up the D major scale. And again, because the chromatic scale has 12 notes, there are other intervals that we're not playing in this pattern. And these other intervals have their own number labels or scale degrees as well. But in the D major scale, it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Now, as I'm saying all of this, it really is a bit of a mouthful. D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 1. We're talking about letters in one case or numbers in another case, and we have these sharp symbols or 8 is 1. It can be a lot to wrap your arms around, especially if you're new to it. And even if you aren't new to it, all of these symbols can be confusing. So to simplify things, let's look at the same pattern using color to really understand what we're looking at and what we're hearing. So in the key of D, the D note is an orange square. And you can see how these orange squares are repeated up the fretboard in various octaves like this. And to play the major scale pattern, we can jump from one note or interval to the next using these colors. We go from D, a low D, to a high D, or in another octave, with the colors, it's easier to see this pattern and see how the same notes, the same intervals are repeated up the fretboard in different positions. But what's even cooler is that these colors show us more than just how to play this pattern. They actually reveal the underlying theory and symmetry of the intervals that are at play in any key. And in the key of D specifically, we're going to look at how these geometric, symmetrical patterns explain how to move up and down the fretboard in different ways, different directions. Now, in another video, I explain how every key can be dissected into 6 basic geometric patterns. There's a definite logic and symmetry to these patterns that you can see using color. In fact, the geometry of color perfectly mirrors the geometry of music, which is what makes this all so beautiful. And to show you what I'm talking about, let's start with the first set of intervals in the key of D, which are intervals 1, or the tonic, and interval sharp 4/flat 5, or the tritone. Now these two intervals are easy to spot because they form a pair of complementary colors. D, the orange square, is directly opposite from its tritone, interval sharp 4/flat 5, or more simply, interval flat 5, A flat, the blue square. All of those letters and numbers and symbols are hard to say. I get tongue twisted there. But at a glance, you can see that orange and blue are polar opposites. They're tritones. And as a result, they're very dissonant, meaning they don't sound especially good together. And rising up the fretboard, they form stacks of slanted notes like this. They really sound awkward together, but they help you get your bearings in this key, and they're easy to spot on the fretboard. So let's start on the open D string, the 4th string. D and A flat, or intervals 1 and flat 5, again, are complementary colors, orange and blue. Now moving on to the next intervals in the key of D, we have 4, also known as the subdominant, G, the red-orange circle, and 5, also known as the dominant, A, the orange-yellow circle. And these notes sound very consonant with D, interval 1, because of their close relationship in the circle of fifths, as I explain in this video. D, orange, is closely related to G, red-orange, and A, orange-yellow. And rising up the fretboard, these intervals form a pattern of notes that are visually connected and audibly connected as well. And here's what they sound like starting on the open A string, the 5th string. Now, a pattern that you'll notice looking at these intervals is that D, interval 1, is sandwiched between intervals 4 and 5 in any position up the fretboard. For example, if you look at this D note on string 5, fret 5, the orange square is between 4, G, the red-orange circle, on the string just above, and 5, or A, the orange-yellow circle, on the fret just below. Likewise, this D note is also flanked by G just above and A below. And this D note is between G just above and A below. Now, because the top 2 strings are shifted up by a fret, there's a shift in this general pattern, like here on the 7th fret. D on string 3 is just above A on string 4, 7th fret, but because of the shift, G, interval 4, is up on fret 8 on the 2nd string. But otherwise, this pattern is consistent anywhere you move on the guitar. The next pair of intervals that are evenly spaced on either side of the tonic, 1, D, are interval 3, or the major third, F sharp, the green square, and interval flat 6, or the minor 6th, B flat, the purple square. Again, that's a mouthful to say all of the letters and numbers, but looking at the colors alone, these 3 intervals form a perfect triangle of secondary colors. And that's what I mean, the geometry of color perfectly mirrors the geometry of music. These 3 intervals are evenly spaced, both visually and audibly. And they actually show up in a lot of chords in music. So they're good to know, and they're easy to see on the fretboard because they form slanting stacks that lean to the left like this. And in sequence, they form kind of an epic sound as you move from one to the next. So we're going to start on the 6th string, 2nd fret here, F sharp, or the major 3rd. And then moving on to the next pair of intervals, we have the flat 3rd or minor 3rd, F, the purple-red circle on one side of D, and then 6th, the major 6th, B, the yellow-green circle on the other side. Both of these intervals have kind of a melancholy, haunting sound that's a mix between consonant and dissonant. Each one, respectively, sounds kind of nice with D, but also kind of bad, and that is because there's some tension going on here. The minor 3rd and major 6th, or F and B in the key of D, are tritones. They're complementary colors themselves. And while they're evenly spaced with D interval 1, they're also evenly spaced with D's own tritone, A flat, the flat 5th, the blue square. So combined, all of these intervals form a perfect square of geometrically spaced intervals. And on the fretboard, they look and sound like this, starting on the 6th string, 1st fret, F. Next are intervals 2 and flat 7, or the major 2nd and minor 7th respectively. In the vernacular of music, these notes are E and C, or simply the yellow square and the red square. Together, these three intervals are part of a hexagon of evenly spaced whole steps. And on the fretboard, they look like this, which sound nice together with kind of a bright, happy sound. To show you what I mean, let's play these notes starting on the open 6th string, the E note. And lastly, let's play the last pair of intervals that flank the tonic D, or interval 1, which are the flat 2, also known as the minor 2nd, E flat on the right, shown as a blue-purple circle, and the major 7th, or C sharp, on the left, pictured as a green-blue circle. Now, because these two intervals are closely connected to D's tritone, A flat, the flat 5 in the key of D, they sound harsh or dissonant with D, because they have an affinity for D's complementary color. And together these three intervals are part of a 12-sided dodecagon, also known as the chromatic scale. On the fretboard, these intervals are easy to find and play because they rise in half-step intervals, 1 fret at a time, on the various strings. We'll start on the 6th string, 9th fret, C sharp. So all of these different intervals form their own subpatterns within the key of D. The geometry of color reveals the geometry of music. And as you dissect these interval patterns and get a feel for them one at a time, you really start to master a given key. Just as if you dissect the game of chess, looking at the various moves that are available to you one at a time, you can really start to master the game. So for example, the knight in chess can move in its own certain way. Or the queen can move in its own way on the chessboard. Or the pawn also can move in its own way on the chessboard. It has different patterns on the chessboard. The same holds true for the intervals in music, and as you get a feel for these interval patterns, you really can start to build on them to create other patterns like scales and melodies and chords and progressions. So, this video, we looked at all of the intervals in the key of D, and now that you know, you can practice these patterns and really start to master the finger movement, get the muscle memory down once you understand you have the hand knowledge based on the head knowledge. So thank you for watching, please subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.